Hi, sweet friends. I'm Emma Watterson, hostess of Root Tips to Wingtips Health Podcast, where you'll learn recipes and health tips to stay balanced and have a healthy mind, body, and soul. I'm a certified health coach and specialize in NLP, hypnotherapy, energy work, and healing. Each week, we will dive into health topics to discuss ideal mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Let's jump in.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Root Tips to Wingtips Health Coaching Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Amber Williams, who is also a coach, and I'm looking forward to our talk today. Welcome to our show, Amber.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're located, and kind of a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm located in Littleton, Colorado, and I have a daughter who's 3, and I'm married, and I have a dog. And I got started in nutrition a few years ago. I was actually doing something completely different. I worked in environmental sciences and for the government, and just kind of gotten to a point where I wasn't super satisfied in my career. I was looking for something a little different, and I always have been interested in health and the body. My undergraduate was in biology, and I always loved that stuff. And kind of concurrently, we were trying to get pregnant, and I was having a hard time, and I was working with a functional medicine doctor, and kind of just through that journey, I was like, oh, I really love this stuff. And so I went back to school. And so kind of over the course of working with him and then learning things, I got pregnant, and I actually found out I was pregnant right after I graduated. So that's kind of how I got into nutrition. It's kind of the short version.
Very cool. And that's awesome. It's interesting where our coaching practice, like how I love hearing people's journeys on how they arrived at where they are today. What program did you study?
I went to the Nutrition Therapy Institute, which is here in Denver. And then just actually about close to a year ago, I did the RWS, which is Restorative Wellness, their level 1 training in gut. And that I found phenomenal, because like my the NTI is great, but it's like kind of like the foundational knowledge, and it's like it covers everything, whereas this was just super focused on gut. And it's the program set up by they're all clinicians, so it's all about kind of clinical experience and developing protocols. And so I just loved doing that, and like just having all that knowledge from all the clinicians who've been through it before.
Oh, very cool. And how do you incorporate your studies into your practice today?
So that's great. So my NTI was holistic, so it's really focused on, we definitely learned the nuts and the bolts of nutrition, but we also had courses in business, and then also in like the psychology of eating and mindfulness. And so it's just really covered a lot of ground. And so I use all of those things. I really believe that we're complex beings, that our bodies are not independent of what's going on in our lives, that, social relationships, physical well-being, spiritual well-being are all intimately tied together, and we need to address all of those things. I think a lot of people, I just really lately have been seeing this, is how emotional blockages can really impact our wellness journey. And so I've even things incorporating like some nervous system things to help the nervous system move through emotional blockages, as well as the foundational stuff that I learned, just, nuts and bolts of nutrition. And then the RWS stuff I was talking about a minute ago really opened up a whole new world for me as far as testing. I really loved doing, and in my own personal journey, even though I was trying to get pregnant, a huge piece for me was gut health and addressing my gut health. So I was trying to get pregnant, and the foundation piece was like, oh man, my gut is way out of whack. So taking supplements for the gut, and I've started incorporating that with my clients and seeing big results there. I think it really helps to be able to pinpoint what's going on in the gut.
Absolutely. And I've heard that your gut is actually operates as kind of a second brain. Like it's there a lot. I've actually heard they're like three separate brains. So we have like our brain, and then we have our gut, which also operates as another brain, and then we have our heart, and like connecting all of these. And I think one of the things that, or one of the challenges that we focus on is with modern medicine. Yes, it's great that there are specialties. Is there's a specialty for it? You've got a heart doctor, you've got neurosurgeons, you've got digestive. You've got all these separate things, and I think a lot of times, yes, even though it's great to address those as a separate issue, sometimes we forget that all those things are connected in the end. And I love what you were talking about is emotional blockages, is when we have these emotions that are literally blocking us from the healing process. It's going to take us longer. And that's where I think it's so vital to have a coach to help guide you through those blockages. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I will be honest, well, I mean, I guess I find it to some degree I'm at the beginning of that journey. Kind of through my own journey, I've discovered how powerful that healing can be. But one of the things that I've really discovered is how part of the vagus nerve is. Kind of what you were talking about with the second brain is that's how the gut brain communicates with the brain, as well as other important things. And that's where emotional trauma often lives, is in the nervous system. So I just incorporate some of the vagal nerve exercises as a piece of that. And then just emotional coaching, because it's so hard to see your own blockages sometimes. And so just having someone across from me who can say, hey, is there kind of a belief there that is impacting you? Like someone I've worked with, I just kept hearing her say over and over, I don't want to be in food jail. And so it's like, oh, let's explore that a little bit. What's that belief? Because it's like one way we can look at about it is that we're in food jail, or it can be like we're eating beautiful, wonderful things that are supporting and nurturing our health. So it can be something that simple, but a lot of times, you can kind of follow that chain down to what's that underlying belief and where did it come from and where does it live in my body? So I think those are all important pieces. We have the protocol, but if we have that belief that's blocking the way, it's going to prevent the healing, both from us taking the steps, but also in our physical body.
That's really cool. And again, I love that you were talking about the vagus nerve, and I think there's a whole bunch of, more awareness of how important that I'm sure you've heard of the polyvagal theory.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's so. If you could tell our listeners a little bit more about the polyvagal theory.
Oh, sure. And I don't know if I'm like, again, it's not my expertise, but it's just something I've become super fascinated with. But it goes back to that the things that happen in our life, we store memories at the nervous system level, especially as we're children. And there's kind of two times this happens. It's like we have conscious memory, but then we have the memory of the nervous system. And if we experience trauma, or if something happens in like kind of our pre-verbal years, kind of before you start fully forming memories, those memories live in the nervous system. So those are those experiences you have when you walk in and something triggers you, but it's like, sorry. It's kind of like you smell something and you get a memory, and sometimes it can be a good and pleasant memory, but sometimes it brings up an emotion, like anger or frustration. Like, why does that always happen? And so those can be the things that are really difficult to address through like talk therapy, because they are at a body level and not a mind level. And so I think a lot of times people will feel stuck there, where they've done all this work at kind of the verbal talking it through level, and it's kind of stuck in the nervous system. So that's where kind of there's all kinds of different ways of working with the nervous system. And so sometimes it's something I maybe can help with if it's more minor, and sometimes it's me saying like, hey, maybe there's another expert that we can pull in to help you address this belief or a deeper issue.
Awesome. And how do you take, I know we talked about like, we talked about emotional blockages and about um, having your conscious memory and then your nervous system memory. I've heard there's a book out there, I think it's something like The Body Keeps Score, and it's
Yeah.
all about trauma. And I was recently talking with another coach recently about trauma and how it's interesting um, how our body does store it at different levels. Like we have our brain level of trauma, and then we have like a conscious level of trauma, but we also have like the physical sense of where we're storing trauma. And so it's interesting how and it's funny but not funny how, I mean, life is traumatic. I mean, it's there. I mean, yes, there are different levels of trauma, but I mean, experiencing life, we're as humans, we're experiencing life here, and there are different ways, and we're it's interesting how we're able to communicate that. And I think it's becoming more of the norm and more acceptable to talk about things that have happened, and allowing, and as coaches we provide those safe spaces for people to process, and they may not know the words or even the emotion to put with what they experienced. And a lot of times when we experience trauma, we tend to disassociate from our bodies, and because, okay, we learned a lesson, we don't want to go down that road again.
Yeah.
But that's not truly addressing the trauma itself. So what are some ways that how you work with your clients?
Yeah, there's a few different things. And I think first I just want to let people know that, like you were saying, there's different levels of trauma. We tend to think of it as something horrific that happened, but again, it kind of goes back to how our body processes trauma. And in our culture, we're not very equipped to deal with emotions. And so when something just bad or unpleasant happens, if it doesn't move through the body, and it can kind of get stuck. And that in and of itself is kind of trauma, because now it's stuck and you're living with it day in, day out. So again, a lot of times I have people do some vagal exercises, and a lot of times they're movement exercises. My favorite ones are like you roll up a towel, you lay on your stomach. It's kind of hard to explain in a video, but there's just certain movements we do, and it stimulates different parts of the nervous system. There's vagal massage too, of like your face, and so there's different parts of because the vagus nerve is huge and it runs through the body, and then there's all these branches that come out in various places, and so there's different ways you can stimulate them, and it's kind of like, I guess if you think of it, it's like a reset. And then so that's my main way. And then I also recommend things like there's some acupuncturists who can help. Rolfing can be fantastic too. And so just any body works, there's types of yoga that are really helpful.
Very cool. And I read somewhere that doesn't part of the vagus nerve run around the roof of your mouth? So like pressing on that. And I was wondering if that relates to when people suck their thumbs, like if it somehow brings a level of comfort. So not only is it that, but I'm wondering if part of it connects with, oh, it's you're somehow reaching that. I just
No, that's a really interesting thought, and I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm not positive about the roof of the mouth. I know there's vagal exercises like where it's kind of like ear massage. That's one of my favorite ones, and then like around the your eyebrow area and like all through your face. But that makes sense because there's some of the exercises that have to do with humming, and that would stimulate that same area too. So yeah, I was surprised if that is that's why a way we self-soothe is because it stimulates the vagus nerve. That's a very interesting thought.
that's that's awesome. And I'm glad you brought up like different types of massage. You mentioned like ear massage and massaging like parts of your face too. And um, I think that's a really great way just giving people different routes for them to heal. And there's so many different ways that you can heal out there. And again, that's why I feel like it's great to have a coach out there who can, because with so many options out there, I mean, yes, you can go to Dr. Google and be like, okay, how can I fix this? And you're going to get a gazillion different answers. But when you have a coach there, they can help guide you, tailor it specifically for you. Though they help figure out, instead of giving you the 100 million answers that Dr. Google would give you, kind of figuring out and mapping out the route that's best for you.
No, that's so true, because everyone's so unique, and what's going to work for one person isn't going to work for anyone else. And that's from protocols in the nutrition realm and to this kind of work of, depending on what your life experiences are, different things are going to be more comfortable and just something that you're more able to do. And other modalities that I forgot to mention, but that are worth files, EMDR, and which I do not do, but again, if someone has something pretty significant going on, that is a great one, and brain spotting.
Yeah, and it's I think that's I'm glad you mentioned the EMDR too as another form of releasing trauma from the body, and it's so fascinating to me. Again, it brings forth that connection. It reconnects and untraps the trauma that's stuck in your body. It connects the mind and the brain and the body. And then it also severs that trigger and builds new neural pathways. So it's one way that to help, it's a form of therapy that can really help. I know it's oftentimes used in the military with those who are suffering from PTSD. And so I'm glad you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, it's a really powerful technique. Personally, I'm starting to dip my toe into it a little bit, but it's amazing. I've just met so many people who have had such big results from using EMDR.
That's awesome. And what are you most excited about with your practice?
There's so many things. I really love working with women, and I think it's, we tend to do the work that we ourselves have already done, or it's a lifelong process. But so for me, I think, thinking of trauma and healing and stuff, I had a lot of things that left me dissociated from my body. And so when I was going through nutrition school and trying to get pregnant and stuff, one of the things I did was track my cycles, and that was just such a beautiful way for me to reconnect to my body. And so that's one of the things I think I'm most excited with working with people. Is so often, again, a lot of it's cultural, that we've kind of learned these ways of coping, but is to really reconnect to our bodies. And I think especially women, there's just so much history there that we don't need to get into, but it's just so easy to dismiss ourselves and not listen to ourselves and what our body's telling us. So I just love that piece of the work, is really reconnecting. And then I also, this is my own experience with getting pregnant, I love working with women who are struggling either with getting pregnant or who are just really enthused to do preconception work, because it's such a beautiful opportunity to kind of help program the genetics of your child for the best results. It's it's just I think we think of how important the pregnancy is, and it's important, but it's you set, I don't know, maybe I should back up and explain this a little bit, but so we have our genetics, but then over top of that, we have epigenetics, where whatever's going on environmentally, we program those genetics and how they're expressed. And so that work happens in the months and the years leading up to pregnancy for both men and women. And it can greatly, and during pregnancy, there's more of that going on as well. But that can really help set your child up for success health-wise, and not just health, but emotionally too. There's been so many interesting studies about women who experience stress preconception or pregnancy and how that impacts their child's levels of anxiety or learning. And so it's just such a beautiful time and opportunity. It's like, I think we can look at it from the scary way of like, oh my gosh, if I don't do all this stuff perfectly, or we can look at it as an opportunity for children.
I think that's really beautiful that you have really incorporated that into your practice as well as working with other women, because I think you're right. It's like a lot of times as a society, we as women are kind of expected to kind of do all the things and just keep going. And yes we can, and also at the same time recognizing that it is okay to learn how to put our oxygen mask on first.
Yes. Such a beautiful metaphor.
I love that metaphor because
playing now, ever since I've had a child, like it just really has a whole nother level of meaning now.
It absolutely makes sense. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was like, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first, because when you're dead, it's really hard to help other people. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you appreciate that metaphor as well. And so can you tell us a little bit about how our listeners can get in contact with you?
Oh, sure. I have a website. It's lotusfirenutrition.com. And then same for Facebook and Instagram. Kind of one of my projects in the new year is to get back to blogging and posting a little bit more. I haven't been super good in the last couple of months, but I have some things I want to talk about, from everything from supplements and quality supplements to some of the pregnancy and postpartum and preconception things. So just things that I'll be posting in the nearish future.
That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to checking those out as well. And I'll make sure to post all that information below this as well. So
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners today?
Yes, I hope everyone's having a lovely year and a happy new year.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode and sharing this space and time with me. I hope you got some great new insights, and if you did, please leave a review, add a comment, question, and/or suggestion, and share with a friend.